through the lot, now you know I'm coming through. When the growth look good on you, best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Table turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keep dealing me cards, I keep fitting in love.
Yes, people. You know what time it is. You know what it is. It's G, and we are back in the building. It is, well, last round of Premier League fixtures until the international break. So we're going to be off. Hopefully not really talking about Liverpool for a little while. But guys, as you can see, scroll across the bottom. If you guys can please smash that like button. If you haven't already, it only takes a second. If you guys can please do so. And if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure you subscribe to GTV. We are on the road, as it says, to 400 subscribers. So let's get into it. Now, as you guys can obviously see, you know, in the caption, we're here to talk about Fabio Carvalho. And as I said, you know, this is going to be, you know, one of the last times that, you know, we kind of speak on Liverpool. You know, we're going to have a little break from Liverpool. I think, you know, I think we all need a break. I think Liverpool need the break more than most, but I think us as content creators and stuff like that, I think we do need a break. Taking a little look, obviously, at Carvalho, you know, this season hasn't really put his mark on anything, if I'm being totally honest with you. Again, not totally his fault. You know, Jurgen Klopp seemingly doesn't really trust him, if I'm being totally honest with you, which is quite weird. I think, especially with how the season's gone, you know, I feel like when you have seasons like this, you know, where performances haven't really been that great, I feel like this is probably the perfect time to kind of try some new things. You know, I mean, we speak about it all the time. You know, I'm trying not to dive too much, obviously, into Jurgen Klopp and, you know, how he does things and, you know, stuff like that. At the end of the day, Klopp's Klopp. He's going to, you know, do what he does. He's going to do what he feels is correct. And, you know, he's got his right to do so. But I feel like this season, with everything that was going on, or everything that's been going on, this would have been a perfect time to kind of, yeah, you know, play maybe Carvalho a little bit more. And, you know, he just hasn't really done so. You know, we signed him from Fulham. You know, at the beginning of this season, we were obviously looking to sign him in the January transfer window of last season. But, you know, I think he decided to stay. I think we felt it was better for him to stay at Fulham, finish off the season, help Fulham get promoted, which he done. And, you know, we get him in the summer. And I think once that happened, once we signed him in the summer, I felt like we probably had two choices. Either we keep him, because he's not an under-21 player. He's not a player that I want to see playing under-21 football. You know, he's past that kind of level now, in my personal opinion. You know, and I think either you keep him in and around the squad, you know, give him the game time, give him the chance to at least try and impress you, you know, in this team, or you send him back out on loan, you know, back to Fulham, to be honest with you. And hindsight's a wonderful thing at the end of the day. You know, I can't diss Klopp for not sending him back out on loan at the beginning of the season. I can, you know, midway through, because he did have another opportunity to do so. Whether teams were in for him, I don't really know. There was a little talk that Fulham might potentially look to try and bring him back on loan and all that kind of stuff, but that would have been a perfect opportunity. He didn't. He's obviously kept him, but, you know, since the World Cup, he's barely even played. You know, we look up here, Fabio Carvalho, this is posted out by Anything Liverpool. Fabio Carvalho has played 68 minutes and 10 seconds since the World Cup. And we can see here, you know, the list of games that, you know, he has played. 10 seconds against, well, 9 seconds actually, to be fair, against Real Madrid. But, you know, we'll round it up and call it 10. 3 minutes against Bournemouth, bench versus United, bench versus Wolves, bench versus Palace, bench versus Madrid, 65 minutes against Wolves, it says there at the bottom. Doesn't really bode well, if I'm being totally honest with you. And, you know, we laud Klopp for his supposable, you know, man management. And we've seen it in the past, you know, with how he treats certain players and the old hugs and, you know, the fist pumps and, you know, the way that he's this father-like figure, you know, something that, you know, that we attribute, you know, Sir Alex Ferguson to, you know, someone who father-like figure, but maybe in a different kind of way, you know, firm but tough, you know, someone who, you know, you always try to impress because, you know, he was the Don Dada, you know, ultimately. And I feel like that's what Klopp was trying to kind of create here at Liverpool, which is absolutely fine. I like that. I think everyone does, to be honest with you. Who wouldn't want a manager who's going to kind of come in and give the players that kind of feeling of, I really want to play for you. And we have seen it obviously throughout the years that Klopp's been here at Liverpool, but I think that this season especially, and maybe over the last couple of years, because you look at the last 2 out of the 3 seasons where it's been a bit of a struggle for Liverpool. This season, obviously, and the season where we had all our centre backs out, injured in the 2021 season. It was a bit of a struggle. Things didn't really look like it was going right. There was murmurs here and there, all these kind of various different things. And it feels like when there's some level of adversity, we're not seeing the same Jurgen Klopp, in my personal opinion. We're seeing kind of a different Klopp, someone who's almost resigned to defeat, but, might get bailed out by the players, the quality of players and things like that. And this season, with so many different young players kind of popping in and out of the team, you got Harvey Elliott, who's played, give or take, I think every single Premier League game at the bare minimum, if not every game, in some way, shape or form. For Liverpool, you've got Bajcetic, who's come in, midway through the season and is kind of, I don't want to say cemented, but, he had found a place at the bare minimum, in the first team squad. We've got Trent, who's obviously still young. And I look at Fabio Carvalho, who's another player, and I think to myself, okay, let's see how this kind of pans out. Let's see how this works. Now, Fabio Carvalho, he's a different type of player. Now, we look here at his positioning. I'll take a look. So this is his all-time, since, his days at Fulham, under 18s, under 21s, first team, and then obviously with Liverpool, he's played at various different positions, centre forward, right winger, left mid, left wing, right mid, centre, attacking midfielder is obviously his main position. And that's the position that I think, in my opinion, was the position that was the reason why, we signed him. Now, I know here, obviously, he's played 17 games, obviously in midfield, scored 10 goals, got himself 4 assists, which is really, really, really good. Maybe was that something that Klopp looked at? Was that something that Klopp thought, okay, you know what? He can play in central midfield. When he has played in central midfield, he offers something different. Now, that's absolutely fine. That is absolutely fine, and we see, when he was playing for Fulham, he might have occupied, those kind of roles. But here at Liverpool, the way that we play, and again, it's a very unique style of play that we play here under Jurgen Klopp, in that, the way he wants his midfielders to play, I don't really understand where he was going to fit someone like a Fabio Carvalho, because ultimately you signed him as a number 10. That's what he was. Now, even if you thought he could play central midfield, surely his skill set, doesn't really show you that he's someone who can play in those positions. Now, we can call a lot of things, there's going to be a lot of excuses and stuff like that, injuries and, et cetera, players out of form and all that kind of stuff. And fair enough, at the end of the day, ultimately those things are going to play some part into, your early development at a new football club, higher standards, higher expectations and all these kind of various different things. And I'm not saying that Fabio Carvalho was supposed to come in and just boom, hit the ground running. And I never really thought that would happen, to be honest with you. But I did think that he'd be someone who would play a lot more games, would be a lot more important than, say, a Bajcetic. Obviously Bajcetic, again, just due to the midfield and things like that, with how the midfield's kind of gone. But that's where I'm then looking and thinking to myself, where does Carvalho kind of fit, into all of this, to be honest with you. I'm kind of struggling. At the beginning of the season, I thought Klopp might play, something like this. Now, this is just looking at the beginning of the season, when everyone was actually still fit and stuff like that. Obviously, there's maybe a few players you may have potentially swapped around, maybe Fabinho potentially, but I don't think at the beginning of the season we would have seen the level of drop-off that we saw. Now, I'm not saying that Carvalho would have come in straight away and been a starter and he was just in, blah, blah, blah. No, not at all. So I don't want anyone to misconstrue what you're seeing here. But for me, when I look at this, I say, this is the player who's playing in his best position. We saw Fabio Carvalho, during the pre-season playing with Darwin Núñez. I think we saw it in a 5-0 victory against RB Leipzig. And we saw the way that they kind of linked up together. And I thought to myself, okay, this looks pretty good. Darwin Núñez, especially with the way that Darwin Núñez plays, and for what I thought we were signing Núñez for, which is to be the focal point of the attack, to be our, number 9, even though he doesn't wear number 9, but to be our number 9, focus of attack, this is the guy that we need to get the ball to, who can put the ball, in the back of the net. I thought that Fabio Carvalho might be one of the players that potentially might be able to help him out with that. Playing for Fulham. I've just got a let me just take this banner off. I've got a lineup that Fulham played against Preston North End back in the Championship last season. This is the kind of lineup that they played mostly. Might be a few players maybe dotted in around who might have potentially have come in, but this is the kind of lineup that they would play on most occasions. And as you can see, Fabio Carvalho playing right behind Mitrovic, and that relationship worked really, really well. So I thought and I assumed that that's what Klopp kind of saw. I didn't think that we would see things like this. This is a lineup that Liverpool had this season. Fabio Carvalho playing left midfield. I really don't get that. Now obviously this is just more, would I say, the starting formations. Obviously in the game they might try to switch it up potentially. I don't really know how they would, but potentially maybe Firmino dropping in, Mo Salah on the right, maybe Darwin Núñez on the left, and then maybe Carvalho potentially trying to come in as for Philip Coutinho-esque, but it just doesn't really work. This is again against Derby in the I think it was the League Cup or the FA Cup. I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, even in a game like this, you're playing in a left of a 3. Now he played all right in this game, but that's just not his position, and I just think that again, this is where we're almost wasting a player's abilities, because in a game like this, especially against Derby, surely, I think it was the League Cup, surely you would play him in that 10 position behind a Leighton Stewart to actually just get him used, to that role, again, but that's only if he sees him in that role, which I don't really know. This is another formation, up against, Manchester City, in the League Cup, and again he's got him out there on the left. I believe he got taken off at half time potentially, in this game. Kind of speaks volumes. It's, for me, it doesn't make any real sense. I was more seeing this, and this is a picture obviously taken against Manchester City in the Community Shield right at the beginning of the season, before the season had even kicked off. Now forget the result, yes we won, brilliant, blah blah blah, all of that, but when I watched this game, what I was seeing when Fabio Carvalho came on the pitch was his connection with Darwin Núñez, how close he was to Darwin Núñez in patterns of play, where he was trying to receive the ball on the half turn, where he was trying to pick up the ball, all of these various different things, where he was trying to feed the ball into Darwin Núñez, to get him, in on goal, all those little things. And I think even for Darwin Núñez's goal, I believe if you look at that goal again, I think the player that's behind him, I'm pretty sure it was Fabio Carvalho, hence the reason why, he's there, he's gone off to, celebrate with him. And, I honestly, I'm just baffled because, we saw, the record, since the World Cup, he's only played 68 minutes, that doesn't really bode well. Now we all know with Klopp takes a lot of time to try and bed these players in. He ain't just, with some players anyway, he doesn't just throw them in and, they hit the ground running. Obviously, famously, players like Andrew Robertson, took a while to obviously get into that first team. Fabinho, took a while to get into that first team. Keita, took a little bit of a while to get into that first team. It only seems like a few of the players that he signed are players who kind of get thrown in, Luis Diaz again, but I mean, that's probably an easy choice, given the fact that both Mane and Salah were just in really, really poor form, at the time that he came in, and he gave us that bit of rejuvenation that we needed in the second half, of the season. Van Dijk, Liverpool desperately needed a centre-back, so, he kind of came in straight away. And then you've obviously got Alisson in goal, who obviously came in straight away. We had, Karius before that. So there are obviously examples both ways, but I did think that he would give Fabio Carvalho a bit more chances, and he just hasn't really this season. And I don't really understand why, and I don't really understand as to where are you trying to really play him. You look here and you see 7 games as a left winger, 3 games as an attacking midfielder, although I don't know when they were, and 2 games as a central midfielder. To be honest, I actually think that's even the other way around, to be honest with you. But, nonetheless, that's what they've got obviously recorded here. And this is for LFC this season. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, cool, you know what? Take away the attacking midfield and take away the central midfield. The sheer fact that you've got him playing 7 times out there as a left winger, I don't understand why. You know, Liverpool. For me, the reason why what annoys me most about that is that you're gonna have him out there as a left winger. Okay, no problem. I got. There's no real issue actually, really, with that, other than the sheer fact that when everyone's fit, so then where does he, where does he fit in the team? It's a bit like Harvey Elliott, actually. Hence the reason why I'm very intrigued as to what Liverpool are actually going to do, in the summer transfer window, because there is a lot of talk in regards to central midfield options. There's a lot of talk in terms of potentially maybe even getting in a new attacking player. I'm just figuring out, so where do you put in a Fabio Carvalho, if you're, or Harvey Elliott, for that matter. Harvey Elliott, who's obviously played most of his career, or started off his career anyway as a right winger, went on loan as a right winger, is now playing predominantly for Liverpool in central midfield, only appeared a few times out there on the right wing. What happens when you then bring in a load of central midfielders? Are you then saying you don't want to sign a right winger, and then Harvey Elliott must become a bench player and then play on the right wing? Again, we look at Fabio Carvalho. If you're playing him mostly on that left-hand side, what happens to Diaz? What happens to Gakpo? What happens to Nunes? That's 3 players at minimum that you've got in front of him on that left-hand side, at bare minimum. And then if you even want to throw Diogo Jota, if he stays, that's 4 players. But let's just say we'll go with the 3 players who are going to be in front of him. So then I'm wondering, so where does he then fit? Because, I mean, you haven't tried him really in a false 9 role kind of thing. Maybe he could potentially play that. I don't know. His finishing, is okay, so to speak. But his best positioning, and his position that, he appeared most times for Fulham, as we can see here, is attacking midfield. It's the position that, I felt that he was most at home with. It was the position that gave him, he's a player who I think needs a free role. He's a player that I always think, he's got good technical ability. So whether, Klopp sees that as, again, the Coutinho kind of esque type of player where they can cut in on that left-hand side and then almost come in a lot more narrower, and then almost form a part of the midfield and then play football from there, I don't really know, because of the way that Klopp wants his midfielders to be quite industrious. Carvalho doesn't really exhibit any of those, and I don't think he's even a player, even in the future, who's going to exhibit that. And if he does, I think we'll then have the same problem that we've got with, say, someone like a Thiago, a player who wasn't industrial, came to the football club, and has now become one of the better defenders that we've got in the midfield, when that isn't what we needed, and it's not what we want from a player who wasn't like that prior to them coming here. So I'm just a little bit worried, and that's why I ask in the title, like, what's the story with, Fabio? Because I want to know, again, viewers, let me know what you guys think, in regards to Fabio Carvalho. Where does he kind of fit, in this team? Because we talk about different formations a lot here at Liverpool. All content creators, fans, people on Twitter, everything. We always talk about, Liverpool should play this formation, because if we play this formation, we get the best out of this guy. I do it myself as well. I always sit there and think, maybe we'd be better if we play 3 at the back, and then we've got the 4 in midfield, and then potentially 3 at whatever. However you see it, we always seem to have a different formation. But we know what Jurgen Klopp is on. We know what Jurgen Klopp is like. This brother is not changing from that 4-3-3. He's now making me detest the 4-3-3 anyway, because of the way that he wants it set up in today's football. Because I feel like he still thinks this is 4 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever, and that this kind of football can just continuously keep working as long as you just change up the players and etc. etc. Whereas I believe that Liverpool should play a different way. But again, that's just my own personal opinion. It doesn't really matter about my opinion anyway. Only matters about Klopp's. But if we know that Klopp is going to continue to play, and what his primary tactic is, which is 4-3-3, where does Fabio Carvalho fit in that? I genuinely want to know, where do people think that Fabio Carvalho is going to fit in a 4-3-3 system? Because he, again, like I said, we've got the players on the left-hand side. Unless he's looking at him to play in that false 9 role, Klopp would have to change around the tactic. He's going to potentially have to go to a 4-2-3-1 with, Fabio Carvalho playing behind, the striker. And people always say, oh yeah, Klopp's changed tactics, and sometimes, he will change style, and, all of these kind of various different things. But I'm sorry, but when I watch Liverpool, it doesn't seem to matter what formation we seem to start out with. Like the other day against Real Madrid, we talked about we might play a 4-2-4, or it's a 4-4-2 kind of variation, or 4-2, so whatever we thought it was going to be. When we checked the average positions, it was still 4-3-3. it didn't change. He just changed personnel with Gakpo playing in the midfield instead. So again, square pegs, round holes. This is something that Jurgen Klopp does quite a lot. Another thing is Jurgen Klopp's not a manager that I would attribute to be good with youngsters. Hasn't, other than Trent Alexander-Arnold, I do not know another youngster. You're going to probably have to go back to his time at, Borussia Dortmund, Mainz, where we can say, yeah, he's really, developed this youngster, he's a fantastic player, etc., etc. I don't know any of them, like any youngster that Liverpool have had at this football club, if we're just talking about Liverpool. So then I worry for players like Fabio Carvalho. I worry for players like, Harvey Elliott. Curtis Jones, we've already seen where that's kind of going at this present moment in time. He looks like he needs a change of manager more than anybody, to be honest with you. He needs a manager who can just trust him. He needs a manager who can play him in the right positions. And Fabio Carvalho is falling into that. Klopp's spoken about Fabio Carvalho this season and mentioned, that, it's nothing really. It's a squad game, and, all these kind of like different little quotes that he puts out and stuff like that kind of brush it off. But ultimately, you've taken a young footballer who was playing consistently at a decent level in the Championship. His team got promoted, no problem. Again, that's not nothing to do with you. You signed him, again, not a problem. I don't think anyone had an issue with us signing Fabio Carvalho, because I still maintain that he is a very, very good player. And it's like you're just kind of, you try to mold these players into the type of players that you want, which again, absolutely fine, no problem with. Problem that we do have is that the type of players that you want, you need specifics for that. That is the unfortunate thing with the style of play that Liverpool have, is that it's so specific. He needs specific players. Otherwise, what you then have, as I said, Curtis Jones, Fabio Carvalho, Thiago, Harvey Elliott, square pegs, round holes. Players just start playing in different positions, and then they're not really playing to the best of their ability. They will shine in a couple of games here and there, but ultimately, as a whole, we're not realistically going to see the best of these kind of players. And I always bring it back to say someone like a Thiago, because people talk about Thiago quite a lot. And prior to us losing against Bournemouth, Liverpool on a semi-decent run and stuff like that, clean sheets and all these kind of various different things, all without Thiago. So then what does that then mean, moving forward? We saw last season anyway. Watch the performances. Thiago shone in a couple of games, but watch the way that Liverpool play. It just wasn't, you could see it. You could see last season that we were trying to potentially do something new. It was just the sheer fact that it just doesn't look right. But again, individual quality would always get, last season anyway, it was always getting Liverpool out of these kind of situations. We had the Mo Salahs, in the end, we got the Diaz's, of this world. We got Van Dijk at the back. We got Alisson at the back. These kind of players will always shine in adversity up until this season, because that will eventually wear off. And that's what we're seeing with a lot of these players who are playing in the wrong position. And Fabio Carvalho, he falls into that kind of bracket. And that's just my beef, is that, I've always said, and again, someone please, let me know, name me another youngster at Liverpool, forget Dortmund, because he's been at Liverpool now for bloody 7 years. Tell me another Liverpool youngster that Jurgen Klopp who's brought through and is do I want to say mainstay? Maybe not even a mainstay, just someone who is important enough to the squad. Maybe not, you don't have to be important to the first team, but an important player for the squad. Even Jones is not an important player for the squad. Have him, don't have him. It doesn't make any difference whether he's here or not. No disrespect to Jones, but we don't miss him when he's gone, and we barely notice him when he is here, unfortunately. And this is a player that was really, really excited about, when he came through under Steven Gerrard. But ultimately, look at that. Harvey Elliott, I guess he's probably the closest one. Still, obviously, question marks around him. He's played all the time, so Klopp does trust him. So maybe we just have to get used to the fact that he is just going to be a central midfielder. Is that what, Jurgen Klopp sees with Fabio Carvalho? Again, 4-3-3, does not have a number 10. Don't care how you want to dress it up. I don't care what positions Gakpo or Firmino take up. Forget all of that. It's 4-3-3. And it seems like Klopp's just trying to run it back to a few years ago when he had that same 4-3-3 and it was so successful. Absolutely fine. But then you need to get specific players. You cannot get players like we saw, because right now Fabio Carvalho is reminding me of a Shaqiri. Doesn't really fit the squad. You don't really know where to realistically put him, but he's got some level of quality. That he might shine in a game potentially, but you don't trust him. And as I said, you just don't fit what's kind of what we need from a central midfielder anyway, because I mean, you could potentially put him on the right, which Klopp obviously did with Shaqiri, but again, he's not even good enough to fit on that in that kind of area. And that's what I'm thinking with the Carvalho at this present moment in time. Again, things can always change, you know, in football very, very quickly. I'm just looking at Carvalho and I'm thinking, where do you fit in and amongst this? And it's just a bit annoying, man, because I think he is, you know, big up to Roms, because Roms spoke about him at the beginning of the season. And I don't want to paraphrase, so if Roms is watching this again, I apologize if this is wrong, but we probably even had him down as like to potentially be a young player of the season. And I wouldn't, and I don't think I even balked at that, because I thought, you know what, yeah, Carvalho, if he gets game time in his position, and again, we all spoke at the, you know, myself, Jerry, Roms, we spoke at the beginning of the season about potentially having a 4-2-3-1 formation. You know, again, Núñez up top, doing what we thought he was going to be doing from what we saw at Benfica, and then Fabio Carvalho doing what we saw him doing at Fulham. You know, I thought, okay, cool. You know, let's get that in. You know, who wouldn't want that, especially for how much we got him for. You know, so you know, to me that was never ever going to be a problem. But then now we come this season, and I know Liverpool been going through some turmoil and stuff like that, but surely this is the time to now try him out. Season's not over, so he might potentially do that after this international break. We might potentially start seeing, you know, Fabio Carvalho playing a lot more in his position, thriving, and all of these various different things. But at this current moment in time, again, I want to know what's kind of going on, because Carvalho is going to have some questions potentially for Klopp, you know, come the summer. He might look at it and think, you know, because you don't want to stall a development. You really don't want to do that. You need to get these kind of players playing. And, you know, they're at this pivotal stage in their career, you know, especially for players, you know, in the age bracket of a Carvalho, Harvey Elliott, you know, the Joneses and stuff like that. They need to be kind of playing consistently at a decent enough level. Premier League is obviously the level that they're currently playing in, so I expect them to be playing at a Premier League level. So whether that's elsewhere in a different league, but in one of the top 5 European leagues, preferably, I would expect them to be playing, you know, all the time. You know, because again, it develops their game. You know, it allows them to start understanding. It also allows them potentially, by moving away on loan, go away and make those mistakes. Anything that you're doing wrong, you can go away and do that, but you're out of the spotlight. You know, we've seen it obviously with Tyler Morton. You know, there's mixed reviews as to in regards to him, you know, and stuff like that. You know, I look at that and I think, okay, he's going away at the bare minimum. He's gone away to make those mistakes. Whatever mistakes he's doing that over at Blackburn. It ain't impacting Liverpool. So that means that once he comes back to Liverpool, hopefully he will understand and think, okay, cool, this, that, and the third. Again, that's Tyler Moore, and that's a whole different case. But when I'm looking at a Carvalho in the summer, he needs to look at it himself. Forget about what really, unless Klopp turns around and says, you're going to be integral to this team, blah, 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 then fair enough. But if not, you need to look at yourself and think for yourself. Don't worry about the team. The team, in my opinion, as a football player, stop worrying about the team. You need to worry about yourself, because it's your career. At the end of the day, if you break your leg tomorrow, the team are still going to carry on. They don't give two shits in that sense. Yeah, they might be all sorry and blah, 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 and will give you the whole T-shirt vibes and get well soon and all that crap that we always see. I hear it. But the reality is, it's your career. It's your football career. So however you see your football career, wherever you think your football career can go, internationally or, you know, on the club stage, whatever, you need to start worrying about yourself. So in the summer, you might have some questions. We saw Nico Williams. He thought about himself. He understood that if Klopp isn't going to rotate, because Klopp never really rotates, only really this season, purely because of the injuries. But on a normal season, if we didn't have this level of injuries, he wouldn't really rotate. He'd keep the same team going and going and going and going and going. Probably the reason why we're in these injuries, but he'd keep the team the same way as it is. So he understood that if that's not going to change next season, that's fine. I'll go to another team. Now, whether Nottingham Forest stay up in the league or get relegated, it doesn't matter. He's going away to get that football. Forest get relegated, I'm sure teams are going to be looking at Nico Williams because of his versatility, because he's been able to show what he can do. Then playing for Wales, go into the World Cup. All of these little things can happen. All of these little things can happen. They don't happen if you're sitting on the bench every single game, not even getting minutes. You know, it becomes quite embarrassing. So, you know, like I said, I don't really know what's going to happen with Fabio Carvalho. Let me know in the comments, what do you guys think is obviously, you know, going to happen with Fabio Carvalho? If you think that, you know, he's going to be a player who is going to get more game time after the international break, if you think that he deserves more game time. Where does he play if he does get this game time? You know, and then what does it look like for him, you know, moving on to next season? But we're going to wrap up there for today's video. Obviously, this is me looking at, you know, Fabio Carvalho, you know, and just kind of, you know, just trying to see, you know, where we think he as a player, you know, may potentially go, you know, trying to understand, you know, maybe what does Klopp think? You know, does Klopp see him as a future star in this team? If he does see him as a future star in this team, whereabouts does he see him? You know, in position wise, I think that for me is probably the most important thing, is where do you see a player like Fabio Carvalho, because he is naturally a number 10. And at this present moment in time, you're not playing him as a number 10. So where are we going to see him? Is he going to turn into that, you know, Coutinho type of a player? We saw Coutinho obviously play out on the left, move into central midfield into later on towards the ending of his Liverpool career. So are we going to see something similar in regards to, you know, Fabio Carvalho? Again, we don't really know, but make sure you smash a like, make sure you subscribe to the channel, make sure you guys share this out if you can, and please let me know in the comments, what do you guys think in regards, you know, to Fabio Carvalho? Where would you guys put him in your team? I'm G, and I'm out.